Are you looking for a special gift for your loved ones? Let's use your wood turning talent and skills to make unique custom gifts for your family and friends. Custom seam rippers are a fantastic gift for the sewing lovers in your life. This is a useful tool that will remind them of you every time they use it. So let's get started. Welcome to Turning Stitches, I'm Sean. We help wood turners learn the craft to begin making fun projects faster. I am terrible at giving gifts. Normally, I wait until the last minute, then end up picking up something that is pretty forgettable. Hopefully you are not like me, but if you are, this video series may help you out. Let's take your wood turning skills and talent to create handmade personal gifts that your friends and family will cherish for years to come. Today's project is a double blade seam ripper kit. These are fantastic projects for your family and friends that love sewing. Just like the pins we made in the last video, there are a few seam ripper kits available, including a necklace. Not only that, there are a variety of materials that we can use, including wood, acrylics, and other materials, so colors and textures seem endless too. This flexibility gives us the ability to customize our seam ripper for the person we're giving them to. And of course, if you're an enterprising wood turner, any project that makes a good gift will be a good seller. There are a lot of steps to cover here, so let's get started. We are including links in the description for seam ripper kits, tools, and supplies that we're using today, so you can quickly find these items for your research. Many of the links are affiliate links, which will not cost you more if you make a purchase, but we will earn a small commission. For this seam ripper, we're going to use an acrylic pin blank, which has already been trimmed down to the length of the tubes roughly at about 3 1/4 inches. I'm going to use my scroll chuck with my pin jaws attached, and we're going to drill an 8mm hole all the way through the blank. With our hole drilled, next we'll take and glue our pin tube into the blank. I always like to take and just kind of scuff up the brass tube a little bit. I think it just helps the glue hold a little better. And today in this process, we're going to be using a little bit of CA glue. This little insertion tool is kind of handy, but it's not necessary. And then we're just going to insert the tube into our hole. Kind of rotate it around a little bit, get the glue all the way around it really well. And we'll give that a few minutes to dry. Now that our glue's dry, we've got our blank mounted back in our pin jaws. We're going to use a barrel trimmer to flush off the face of our blank and trim down to the end of our tubes. While we're waiting for the glue to dry is also a great time to sharpen your tools. With the ends of our blanks flushed off and trimmed down to the tubes, it's time to assemble everything onto our pin mandrel so we can get to turning. I always like to use the bushing kits that come with projects like this. It just makes it a lot easier, and in this case it's going to help us hold everything together on this pin mandrel. So the first thing I'm going to do is slide one bushing on. Now today, since we're making a double-ended seam ripper, we have the same size bushing on both ends. You'll want to pay attention to your kit to make sure that both ends need to be the same size. So next I'm just going to slide on the blank, and I've got a little slop here, but you'll notice our blank is going to fit right down over this end of the bushing, and that's going to be the same on both ends. You can see this kind of reduced area. So we're going to put that inside the tube. And that's going to hold everything securely, even though we've got an 8mm tube on a 7mm pin mandrel. I'm going to put the washer on, then the knurled nut. That'll get everything tightened up. So now once we've got that nice and snug, we'll put our mandrel into our headstock, and then we're ready to bring up the tailstock just to support this end. Now on my live center, I've got this more blunt. I don't have a sharp point here, and I don't want to apply a lot of pressure toward the headstock. I really just kind of want to hold the end of the mandrel, and that's all I need to do. We'll lock that down, and we should be good to go. So now it's time to turn. So even though we're using acrylic today instead of wood,
we're going to turn it just like it was wood. I've got my spindle gouge here. We're just going to use the spindle gouge to get the sharp corners off. I want to make sure it's nice and sharp. So I've switched over to my spindle detail gouge, and we're just going to work down to the bushings on each end and start giving our seam ripper a little bit of shape. Once you're happy with the shape of your seam ripper handle, it's time to start the finishing process, which in this case starts with sanding. Now this acrylic is pretty smooth, so I'm going to try to start at 220 and work up the grits from there. With the acrylic, I do want to go to a pretty high, I'm going to sand up to roughly 1,000 grit, maybe a little more before we start polishing. So let's get the process started. If you're using wood, or if you've got a lot more tool marks that you need to remove, you may want to start with a 100 grit or maybe even 150 grit. And I do have the lathe speed turned back down to about 325, which is where I do most of my sanding normally. If you're getting value out of the video so far, hit that like button. And make sure you subscribe so you can come back and review this project if you need to later. Even though I'm using acrylic here, I'm going ahead and doing just a real light hand sand, trying to remove some of the radial marks. You definitely want to do this if you're using wood. Okay, we're starting to get this smoothed out really well. This is 1,000 grit. After this, we'll start polishing. On projects like this where I'm using wood instead of acrylic, I'll use CA glue as a finish before I start polishing. If you want to see that entire process, I'll link the video above where I use that same process on pins. Now it's time to polish. So I usually use one of these two methods, either a micro mesh pad like this one or the Mirka Abralon pads like these. Today we're going to use the micro mesh pad. So I've got the lathe speed kicked up to a little over 2,000 RPMs. We're going to use a little bit of water, and we're just going to work through the grits with our micro mesh pad until we've got this nicely polished. Now the one thing that you do want to keep in mind, there is a little bit of rigidity to this pad, so I only want to rub the pad. I don't really want to apply any pressure to the piece while we're polishing. So I'm starting with roughly 600 grit, which backs up a little bit. I used 1,000 grit sandpaper, but this will just give me a little bit of a slurry. You can kind of see the milky finish right there. So I don't really want to apply much pressure here. I do have a couple details I want to get into here, but I just want the pad rubbing the workpiece. I'm going to take a little bit of a paper towel here, remove that material, and then we're on to the next grit, and we're just going to kind of keep working up all the way through our process. I've got this polishing paste. It's really for CA glue. We're going to apply it here, and I'll just bring it up to another little bit of a shine. So I've got a clean paper towel. Just going to put a little dot on there, and we'll just let that just kind of polish. Rub it on with the towel, go to a clean spot, pull it right back off. We've got our handle removed from the mandrel. If you're using wood and the CA finish, a lot of times you end up gluing the bushings and the workpiece together. So sometimes you want to score that with a utility knife. That's just a tip to help get that, keep from cracking your finish. With the acrylic, we're good to go, no problems there. The assembly is really relatively easy. We just have these retainer springs. We're going to take this solid side and we're going to insert it first into the tube. So we're just going to kind of roll it up inside the tube and just press that in. We're going to do that on both ends. Fit inside the tube and just push it on in.
Last thing to do is just insert the blade into the handle, and our seam ripper's finished. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll know when our next gift idea video is out.